You're a conservative. Is it conservative to blow up the deficit to the extent that they have $4 trillion over 10 years?
Of course not.
Well, that's what the One Big Beautiful Bill does.
Well,
it was the
that's
biggest
because the One Big Beautiful Bill did not have enough.
Political commentators Brian Tyler Cohen and John Fetterman recently faced off on the Alex Michaelsson Show to debate the Trump administration's performance and shifting public opinion. Their exchange reveals key insights into America's current political divide. The debate centered on three critical areas: the administration's policy outcomes during its second term, recent polling data showing approval rating trends, and broader shifts in public sentiment. Both commentators brought contrasting perspectives backed by specific data points and real-world examples. Let's examine the most compelling moments from this exchange and what they reveal about the state of political discourse in America today.
Gallup poll numbers are in, and they do not bode well for President Trump. The president's job approval rating has fallen to 36%, the lowest of his second term. Meanwhile, his disapproval rating rose to 60%. For comparison, Trump's all-time low was 34% at the end of his first term, following the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Gallup's latest numbers are from a poll conducted during what became the longest federal government shutdown in U.S. history. Here to break that down for us and more is our political panel. Brian Tyler Cohen is the host of the No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen podcast, which is seen by hundreds of millions of people on his YouTube channel. And Republican strategist John Fleischman is here. You can read his work at sodoesitmatter.com. Great writing there. Also the publisher of the Flash Report. Brian, welcome back. John, good to have you here for the first time.
Thank you, sir. Great to be here.
So let's start with President Trump's approval rating. What do you make of that, Brian?
I think that people are recognizing the con that they've been sold. This guy swept into office amid a fury of populist promises that he would lower the cost of groceries, of eggs, of housing, of rent, and then he got into office, engaged in a trade war that sent the cost of everything surging, cut everybody's health coverage, Medicaid, ACA subsidies, food assistance, and on top of all of that, had the audacity to actually focus his attention on encrusting his Oval Office in gold, building a $350 million ballroom, buying a couple of Gulfstream jets, getting his own Qatari jet that he retrofitted to the tune of $1 billion, paid for by American taxpayers. And so, I mean, it's just...
He says that one won't be, but we'll see. Your point taken. You're not a fan. Right. What do you think? I mean, and do you agree? Do you think the president's doing a good job?
Well, I guess the short answer is I think the president's doing an infinitely better job than Harris would have done. Not surprising from your conservative panelist. But I think that these polling numbers all need to be taken in context, because if you go back and look all the way back, Reagan, Clinton, Obama, both Bushes, Carter, Ford, Johnson, Truman, all at some point during their presidencies had polling numbers in the mid-30s, just like Trump does. It goes up and it goes down. I will say the economy is a problem for the president, and I think that becomes the biggest issue. I think while a lot of the stuff that my panelist here has brought up are sensational, I don't think the approval numbers for the president rise or drop based on whether or not he's putting an addition on the White House. But when people's prices, when they're buying groceries, when people are buying gas, and those prices go up, that's a problem. And when the president decided to go out and start, he definitely said, we're going to end the Biden economy and we're starting the Trump economy. And he imposed all of these tariffs, taxes, right? I think that's not had a good effect on the price of goods. And we've now seen him now scrambling and actually untariffing a bunch of things, which is a challenge. But the polling numbers don't really bother me. They may bother him, because I think he's very concerned about what his polling numbers are. This stuff goes up and it goes down. It's the nature of things.
You pointed out that Ronald Reagan had lower poll numbers and then went and won 49 states.
Right. In 1982, there was a recession again. It's economy related. And so I think that President Trump over the next year, if he's able to turn the economy around, he will save the midterm elections. But if the economy stays where it is right now, it's not going to be a positive night for Republicans next November.
And it's interesting you're saying the way to turn the economy around is to get rid of the tariffs that he implemented.
That would be one helpful thing. I also think when all the great economic policies in the One Big Beautiful Bill get implemented, that's going to have an overcharging effect on driving the economy, as my colleague will tell you.
I'm sure that cutting Medicaid from 17 million Americans and cutting food assistance to the tune of $186 billion is going to just send the economy surging.
Yeah.
Well, again, I would remind you, especially like we're talking about the Medicare subsidies right now. These were a COVID era policy that were passed on the idea that during COVID, these would go up. And then on a completely partisan budget rescission bill, Democrats extended the temporary cuts for another 2 years, and now everybody wants to extend them again. So the idea is that on the political left, we don't care about the budget deficit. What we care about is growing the welfare state and giving more and more subsidies.
Well, I would ask, you're a conservative. Is it conservative to blow up the deficit to the extent that they have $4 trillion over 10 years?
Of course not.
Well, that's what the One Big Beautiful Bill does.
Well,
it was the
that's
biggest
because the One Big Beautiful Bill did not have enough cuts in it. If we're going to get rid of the deficit, we need to true up federal spending.
But it's not about eliminating the deficit.
Sure
it was
it
never
is.
about eliminating the deficit. Donald Trump in his first term added 25% of all debt that we have. His second term now adding another $4 trillion. These Republicans,
if you're asking me to confirm for you that deficit spending is a bipartisan problem that is done by presidents of both parties, absolutely.
The debate over fiscal policy and deficit spending reveals a fundamental divide in American politics. Political commentators Brian Tyler Cohen and John Fetterman recently clashed over how both parties approach government spending, and their exchange highlights a pattern worth examining. Cohen argued that deficit concerns often shift based on which party controls the White House, pointing to historical examples. During the Clinton administration, the federal budget achieved a surplus, a rare occurrence in modern American politics. Today's defense spending has reached unprecedented levels, exceeding $800 billion annually. Fetterman acknowledged current economic challenges and suggested that legislative proposals must deliver tangible results to maintain public support heading into midterm elections. This recognition of economic realities stood out in the discussion. The debate underscores how fiscal policy remains contested terrain, with both sides questioning whether proposed legislation will benefit working Americans or concentrate wealth at the top. What's your take on deficit politics? Share your thoughts below.
But it's not good policy for America because it is to say to our grandchildren, we have a $48 trillion debt. I watched some congressman say, I think from Northern California, say, hey, I got money for a fire engine for my district. And I'm thinking, really? You actually just borrowed money from our grandchildren to buy a fire engine? And so everything's turned around in Washington.
Well, speaking of congresspeople from California, there's last time you were on, we were fighting about redistricting, right? And Proposition 50, which passed here in California, which is redrawing district lines to help Democrats and to hurt Republicans after Texas redrew their lines to help Republicans. Well, now Darrell Issa, who has long time been a congressman in California, according to Punchbowl News and the Texas Tribune, is at least thinking about the concept of moving from California to Texas to run there as a congressman, even though he's currently a congressman from California. Issa's team, we reached out to him and asked him about it. They said, we don't have any news tonight, but stay tuned. That was the comment, which was not exactly a denial. You've known Darrell Issa for probably decades.
Oh, sure.
What do you make of this?
I think that, this very on both sides, admittedly partisan gerrymander in California has caused him to now be in a district that is very, very hard to win on purpose. It was gerrymandered to become a Democrat seat. And I think he's looking at all of his options. But I think that right now, this is more like, I think, trying to figure out what's going on. You've got Texas lines that are currently being litigated in federal court. You've got California lines that are being litigated in California court. But I think that if those lines I could see him doing some focus groups and some polling and seeing whether or not he can get away with it. Remember, Darrell Issa has national name ID because he, of course, was the chairman of the House Oversight Committee during almost all of the Obama administration. So he could make the leap. And of course, he's one of the wealthiest members of Congress. So he would certainly be able to communicate to the voters. And I could tell you one thing, if he were to make that leap, there's not a single voter in that district who wouldn't know what they were doing. And if they chose to say, hey, we want to elect him, that'd be interesting. But I will say it's kind of interesting because somebody told me, don't you have to live in the state that you're in? And so I did a little bit of research. And what I found out is the Constitution says you have to live in the district at the moment you are elected. So he can be in Congress, represent a district in California, and then literally if he wins his primary, then at his leisure in that that's a seat that was double digits for Harris.
Yeah.
And now the new seat is double digits for Trump.
Yeah.
He could literally run, and if he won, then he could move. But he would have to move.
How does this feel to you?
I mean, look, nothing says that somebody's going to have their finger on the pulse of what the people in that district in Texas need than a Californian who may or may not move there at some untold point in the future just because, he's wealthy enough and desperate to, retain his proximity to power.
And remember, who did this? Dr. Oz did this, didn't he? He was like a resident in New Jersey.
He didn't win.
Dr. Oz did
There's
it.
no saying that Darrell Issa will win.
Hillary Clinton did it. Bobby Kennedy did it.
This is very popular.
There certainly has happened in the past.
Very popular. But Issa is a very shrewd political person. He will look at this, and who knows? He made him a couple phone calls, is what I'm guessing, and that caused a little furor, and we'll just see what happens.
One thing that you wrote about today, which was interesting, is this concept that the Trump DOJ in the Civil Rights Division is now opening up a Second Amendment avenue where they're defending. Can you tell us a little more, just briefly, what this is?
Sure. So since, especially here in Donald Trump's term, the Department of Justice in the Civil Rights Division has gotten a lot more aggressive and active in Second Amendment defense cases, more so than they have before. In fact, they're currently litigating against the Sheriff's Department in Los Angeles, where we're filming right now, because the Sheriff's Department there is spending eons reviewing legal carry permits. Do
you think this is a good thing?
This new thing? Sure, because I think what's happening is it's almost like an administrative thing that you're getting credit for. They're doing so much of this work that they got to put it somewhere. So they're creating this kind of civil rights division inside of it. And what they're basically saying is we're expanding civil rights to not only be civil rights relative to groups, but also civil liberties and people's individual liberties.
Good idea.
I mean, let me just say, thank God somebody is looking out for the gun owners out there. As kids are getting killed in schools, as people don't know across this country whether they can go to the movies safely, bowling safely, concerts, church, temple, wherever it may be. At least you have the Trump administration out here making sure that the real victims are taken care of.
I think the Trump administration is going after all of those victims, but the point being, we have a bunch of rights guaranteed in the Constitution, and the government's responsibility is to protect all of them, not just some of them.
We have seen no action on behalf of the Trump administration at the hands of this gun violence that continues to plague this country. And the fact that they have the audacity then to go forward and say what we really need here is to open up an entirely new division to focus on the rights of gun owners, while there's been no legislation to protect kids in schools, no legislation to protect all of the. I mean, gun violence is the #1 killer of children in this country, and the fact that we now have a division of the DOJ, the same DOJ that, by the way, is ignoring everything that's happening with the Epstein files.
But understand what's going on here. This is to defend legal gun owners. These people that are shooting up schools are not legal gun owners. These are people that are getting guns illegally and taking.
Not always the case, but
a lot
to
of
your point, John, Brian, we got to leave it there because we're out of time. But really appreciate both of you coming in. Thanks.
How do we balance Second Amendment rights with public safety? This question sparked a revealing exchange between political commentators Brian Tyler Cohen and John Fetterman, highlighting one of America's most persistent policy debates. Cohen raised a fundamental question. While gun ownership is constitutionally protected, how do we address the public safety concerns surrounding firearm violence? He suggested current policy discussions may not adequately address the root causes of gun-related incidents, including mental health infrastructure and prevention strategies. Mental health resources are frequently cited following mass casualty events, yet comprehensive reform efforts face significant legislative challenges. The debate continues over whether new enforcement measures address substantive concerns or primarily serve symbolic purposes. This exchange reflects the ongoing tension between constitutional rights and public safety, a debate that demands evidence-based solutions. Where do you stand on balancing these priorities? Share your perspective in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more policy analysis.